I see these no kings, which are funded just like the Southern Law was funded. You saw all that. Southern Law is financing the KKK and lots of other radical, terrible groups. And then they go out and they say, oh, we've got to stop the KKK. And yet they give them hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. It's a total scam run by the Democrats. It shows you that, like Charlottesville was all funded by the Southern Law. That was a Southern Law deal, too. And it was done to make me look bad, and it turned out to be a total fake. It basically was a rigged election. This was a part of the rigging of the election. Mm-hmm. And that's what you really should be doing. I mean, I hope one of your 60-minute episodes, which really hasn't changed very much from the last few years, I'm surprised, but one of those episodes should be on Southern Law and the fact that they spent millions and millions of dollars on absolute far right and just bad groups. Mm-hmm. And then they'd use those groups and they'd say, these are Republican groups and we're coming to your rescue. And they're the ones that have funded it, and they're the ones that keep them going.
President Trump on 60 Minutes with Norah O'Donnell, they were very back and forth, you might say, in that interview. But President Trump is exactly right. What the president is pointing out there is what we've been discussing about the Southern Poverty Law Center in the background, trying to stoke the flames and fund those most hateful groups that they're supposed to be combating publicly. And they're raising a ton of money off of it. Let's get to somebody who knows the full consequence of the Southern Poverty Law Center's actions. Jack Posobiec joins us once again, senior editor at Human Events, also a veteran Navy intel officer. And I encourage you to check out his book, Unhumans, The Secret History of Communist Revolutions and How to Crush Them. Jack, welcome back to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon. Jack, can you hear me okay?
Well, hey, thanks.
Yep.
Oh, I can, yes. Mixed, you hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks so much for having me on. Glad yesterday worked out. I know you guys had a bit of a weather situation, but glad to hear that everyone is okay. But unfortunately, the political storm that we are dealing with in Washington, D.C., because of the violent left, we're only now just starting to scratch the surface of how deep this rot goes, because people need to understand the intrinsic connection, because the rise of violence that we've seen, the 3 assassination attempts on the president, including the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and these groups and this deceitful dark funding and the sinister way that they use events like Charlottesville and others to incite this type of violence.
You know, I'm pulling up here as we are speaking, Jack, the Southern Poverty Law Center hate map. This is an active page on the SPLcenter.org website, and it is very obvious that Turning Point has been in the, I don't know if I could even say this, crosshairs of Southern Poverty Law Center's efforts. They have referred to Turning Point as a hate group, and we know the tragic passing in September of Charlie Kirk. Passing is not even the right word. Assassination of him by somebody who's a radical. Are there consequences greater than potentially the Southern Poverty Law Center's usage of the hate that they stoked to make money? I mean, to me, it looks like it must be far more consequential than that.
Well, we just have to go to the timeline just to go back and talk about what happened to Charlie, because Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA were put on the SPLC's hate map, the one you just referenced, in May of 2025. I remember talking with Charlie when that happened. I remember we were doing episodes about it, but we had no idea that just 4 months later, so that was basically, Memorial Day, and then just past Labor Day of the same summer, Charlie's gone. And he was done because in the similar way that when you look at the manifesto of the Correspondents' Dinner shooter, where he was talking about how he felt that he was doing this out of self-defense, right? This is what they do, Annie. Groups like the SPLC and groups like this take people like Charlie or President Trump, and they say, because of the things that they are saying, they are therefore violent. Words are violence. Remember, that's what they teach. And so if their words are violence and their thoughts and statements, right? Statements, not doing anything. Charlie had a microphone. Those are violent. Therefore, violence in response to it is a form of self-defense. And this is something you actually see with communist movements going far, far back. And so when people say to me, how could someone do something so horrible? I say, well, because they've been inculcated in this far left ideology. They've been indoctrinated it, they've been baked into it, and told that for you to lash out at someone like a Charlie Kirk or a Donald Trump, why, you're helping your fellow man, you're helping the universe, you're helping the trans community. You need to do something like this. And that's exactly what Tyler Robinson said, and that's exactly what Cole Thomas Allen said in his manifesto.
Let's talk a little bit about the White House Correspondents' Dinner and what we know about this person. This person seems well educated. They seem as though they functioned in society in areas that have been, publicly documented. Educator of the Month or Teacher of the Month. Is it getting a little more obvious that there is an indoctrination that is taking place from the time that people pass through our education system, that there's something more than what I would like to see? The university system should be an employee and an employer factory. It seems as though right now our often federally subsidized university system is not at all about that. It's about indoctrination.
Well, that's exactly right. And I'll do one more, is that Luigi Maggioni also went to an elite university. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. He had high honors. He was also the valedictorian of his prep school. So someone who had high honors, high academic achievement. You see this also with Thomas Matthew Crooks having a near perfect SAT score, Tyler Robinson scoring top 1 percentile of his ACT. So we do absolutely see a correlation here. We see a profile that is starting to emerge of elite education and these types of heinous acts. And look, I'm not going to sit here and paint with a broad brush and say that anybody who goes to Caltech or UPenn or something like that, President Trump went to UPenn, for example, and I believe a lot of his family, but his kids went there as well. And it doesn't mean that it affects everyone, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And that doesn't mean that when you put these certain pieces of the formula together and then you add in resentment, envy, petty jealousy on top of that, some of these guys end up taking that next step and deciding to do what they view as the next logical step in the progression. I need to be the one to save the world from the hate of Donald Trump. I need to be the one to save the world from the hate of Charlie Kirk. And if I don't do it, who will do it with me? And so you get these LARPers, these people who think that they're actually fighting, Nazis and Russian spies and all of these things, because that's what they're taught over and over and over. And certain people become susceptible to it.
Jack Posobiec speaking with us right now, senior editor at Human Events. I encourage people to follow you on X at Jack Posobiec. Here's something that a lot of people are having the both sides conversation right now. Is it both sides? Is it one side? But when I hear people on the left defending that it's not just the left, I don't really ever hear people on the left say that this isn't a leftist problem. They cover that truth with these three. These are the three issues I hear talked about the most. Those Minnesota lawmakers, that situation where that guy showed up and killed that lawmaker and their spouse, Paul Pelosi and the hammer incident, and January 6th. They use those three incidents to say that this is a both sides problem. I'm curious as your response on those three particular instances as to whether or not that's the other side of the same coin.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can look at those instances, and number one, obviously, there's a problem here with causation, right? So they're doing a backwards causation. Those were incidents. You talk about Rob Reiner, you talk about Paul Pelosi. Those things had already happened. So if the president makes a comment after something happened, that's not inciting because it's already occurred. Now, I mean, he makes his comments. We all know about his comments, but I've never seen the president call for violence like that. I've never seen the president talk about rank and file supporters like that. He has called for legal prosecutions and legal investigations, and he's always stuck to the rule of law. And gosh, if you want to go all the way back to January 6th, he was talking about a legal mechanism in the House and the Senate to overturn, or at least not even overturn, to look into the election of 2020. If you go through all of his statements, that is what he said over and over and over. And he would, give these speeches talking about why it should be looked at. He never called for violence. It just didn't happen. So there's a difference between that and, okay, you're going to make a statement, you're going to make a comment. We know it's been a fractious environment, but he doesn't make these calls for saying that we need to silence our opponents, that we need to go after them, that we need to do these things. And I'll just say one further on the both sides. And I've said this to many journalists. Look at the reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination. The right didn't pick up guns. They didn't go and rush to the battlements and say we need to take to the streets or compare it to the George Floyd reaction. The right didn't do anything like that. And I've said this to journalists. If we were the people who that you say we are, then that would have been the moment. But how did we react? We showed you who we are. We reacted with prayer, with candles, with linking arms, and not just in this country, Annie, but all around the world, because that's who we are. We are people of God. We are believers. We are the faithful. And when we held Charlie's memorial, that is what you saw on full display.
Yeah, that was a very spiritual experience. I know for a lot of people who shared that faith, but even for those who were watching it, opened a lot of eyes for people who were like, this is an interesting way to react to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was, dare I say, perfect. Jack Posobiec speaking with us right now. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about moving forward here, because I think that the America First message that this president, the thought, the goal of America First, that this administration and that, the MAGA, people want to call it MAGA, that means a lot. It's a charged word at this point. The America First message is still a very popular message among the people, but there's a lot of these things that tend to get in the way. I don't want to call them distractions because they're very important stories and they deserve the attention they're getting. But how President Trump's got 3 years left in his term. They've tried to kill him 3 times. How does the president continue to stay the course to implement as much America First policy as he can with the 3 years he has left with the climate that is out there right now politically, the hate that exists, the desire for his death that exists?
Well, I certainly agree with you that we need to do more to crack down on this. We need to crack down on these violent groups. By the way, this guy seems to be a member of one of these anti-ICE groups that was out there, and I've called many times for full criminal investigations at the federal level into every single one of them. Posts he was making on Blue Sky, we need to crack down in terms of that more and really look into people that are spreading violent rhetoric and incendiary. And again, if people are making comments that are under the First Amendment, that's under the First Amendment. But when that crosses a line, and we all know what that line is, then you should be getting a visit. But one of the big pieces that I've loved to see where we do actually have a bit of a course correction now, and I say that as a Navy guy, that with Todd Blanche taking the reins over at the Department of Justice, look at what we've seen just in the last 4 weeks. It hasn't even been a full month yet that Todd Blanche has been in charge of Main Justice there at DOJ, where we've seen the SPLC indictment, which you just outlined. Mm-hmm. We've seen now, as of this morning, these raids on fraud centers in Minneapolis and all across Minnesota. And I even just saw, I haven't even gone through the full indictment yet. They just indicted a Fauci advisor for covering up the origins of COVID and the Wuhan lab, and a federal indictment. So this has been one of the missing pieces, I think, is that accountability. It's not revenge. It's accountability for things that have been perpetuated upon the American people for the last 6 to 10 years that were such a big part of the 2024 campaign that I think a lot of people, and rightly so, were saying we want to see more accountability. And I think in the last 4 weeks, we're starting to see that.
I think so as well. Jack Posobiec, we're going to let you go, and thank you for your time today and your flexibility with the reschedule from yesterday. We appreciate your voice here very much. Thanks for the time.
Of course. God bless. I'm glad everyone was safe.
Yep. God bless you as well, Jack Posobiec. We'll talk to you again soon. Senior editor